Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much. Al asked me to talk about the bus trip, the Sacramento bus trip, and that was on March 18th and 19th of this year. So I guess the first question is, what is the KHTS bus trip? In 2005, then Assemblyman Keith Richmond and Carl Goldman of KHTS radio station were together at an arthritis walk at Bridgeport Park. According to Carl, Dr. Richmond, or Assemblyman Richmond, was kind of frustrated with Santa Clarita Valley politics and pretty much let Carl know that. So Carl came up with an idea and suggested that perhaps there could be a bus trip with people participating from Santa Clarita that went to Sacramento and met with different politicians there and leaders there, senators and assembly people. And ostensibly the people would be from the community leaders, regular people like you and I, and we are community leaders. And so evidently they considered it and decided to do it, and the tradition was born. And this year's was the 13th annual bus trip. It went through Richmond's time in Assembly, Smythe, and now Wilk. So he picked right up on it. And I'm going to tell you in a second here the different types of people that were there, and it truly is a cross-section of the people in Santa Clarita Valley. Some of the participants came from College of the Canyons, the Senior Center, water companies, Our Valley Magazine, school board members, educators, health people, people from the Domestic Violence Center, Santa Clarita Valley TV, realtors, developers. There was also a man there from the Golden State Gateway Coalition, and a lot of characters too. And they truly were, because one of the things that we had to do on the bus was do self-introductions, and we had to tell a secret about ourselves. So while I'm not at liberty to tell secrets that other people told, I'll tell you one about me in a moment. But the sponsors that we had for the bus trip were Castaic Lake Water Agency, Facing Medical Group, Union Bank, California Credit Union, Southern California Gas, and the Santa Clarita Chamber of Commerce, as well as KHTS and Assemblyman Wilk. It was a great opportunity for us to do networking for people from all walks of life in Santa Clarita. So what did we do? I told you that we introduced ourselves on the way up, talked about what we would expect out of the trip and what we hope to accomplish. We were also interviewed, live interviews on the bus on KHTS radio station and broadcast back here to the valley so people that were listening could hear what we have to say. The secret that I told myself was how I met Al Ferdman, and that was he and I were both in Tibet selling U.S. currency on the black market. But at any rate, after the bus trip, we ultimately arrived at our destination in Sacramento. We had a brief time to go in and check in at the hotel, and then we hustled right over to the Capitol. And that's where our meetings with the different assembly people, senators, and also some caucus people and other people that just work in state government and help us out. And we'll talk about it in a second. I'll have just kind of a brief statement about each meeting that we had. But anyway, so the first person we met with was a lady by the name of, and she was an assemblywoman from the 12th Assembly District, which is San Joaquin and Stanislaus counties, and her name was Kristen Olson. And she talked to us about education. She told us that education gets 48% of the budget. That's a big chunk of the budget. And if I remember right, if anybody else was there, and if you remember differently, let me know. But that's a 48% of the budget. I think was the biggest chunk of the budget of any interest group. There were many people there from Santa Clarita that had to do with education, and they asked good questions of her. I found her to be forthright, concerned, and more than happy to answer our questions and spend time with us. Then we met a gentleman who's an assemblyman for the 36th district, who is a Democrat, and it's an interesting story. His name's Steve Fox, and I talked about character. He's a nice man, and he has something he wants to accomplish, and he was able to do that. And the area he covers is Antelope Valley, Lancaster, Palmdale, Quartz Hill, Acton, Lake Los Angeles, and some parts of Kern County as well. But what he did was, realizing he wouldn't be elected as a Republican this last time in that district, he became a Democrat and got elected. So he spoke with us about higher education and Prop 30 and issues like that. After we met with those two people in that afternoon, then we went back to the room, and that evening we had dinner at the Firehouse Restaurant in Old Town in Sacramento, and that too is part of the tradition. I believe that every time they go there, they have dinner at that restaurant, and it's historic in that it's in Old Town Sacramento, but evidently there's many political deals have been made in that restaurant, probably at the tavern as well. And when you go there, you see many pictures of all the different politicians that have been there for many years back. So it's kind of an interesting place. Our keynote speaker was a man by the name of John Chang, who's the state controller. And one thing I meant to tell you too, let me go back to this. The first speaker was a Republican. The second speaker, Steve Fox, as I said, was a Republican, became a Democrat. John Chang is a Democrat. And I mention that for a reason, and I get to the end of my presentation, I'll tell you about it. But I found Speaker Chang to be very dynamic. He's certainly self-assured and purposeful in his presentation. And it was obvious that he's committed to his responsibility. And his responsibility as the controller is to make sure that the state stays solvent and the money's spent appropriately. And during the speech, he worked the room. He was all around the room talking to people and making sure that everybody understood what it was he was talking about. very effective, and it appeared that he is a man of great sincerity. Next morning, bright and early, 9 o'clock, we were back over at the Capitol. This time we met with Assemblywoman Diane Harkey, who's also a Republican from 73rd Assembly District, which is Orange County, Dana Point, Selma, Capistrano, Camp Pendleton, Oceanside, which is in San Diego County as well. She was blunt and to the point. She talked to us about high-speed rail. And let me back up just a second. She's the vice chair of the Assembly Committee on Appropriations, Revenue and Taxation. She's Public Employees Retirement System, PERS. She sits on that committee as well. I found her to be very committed to make sure that the state does things that are physically responsible and the solutions are viable and helpful for the state of California and its citizens. Another person that we met was Assemblyman Pan from the 9th Assembly District, who also, I believe he was a Democrat as well. He's from the Sacramento, Elk Grove, Lodi, Galt area, and he spoke with us about health concerns. Then we went on to Assemblyman Blumenfeld, who was a Democrat at 45th Assembly District, which is northern and western part of the San Fernando Valley. And if you know, he has just become the city councilman for LA and taking Dennis Zine's spot. But he made a commitment, and what he worked on there was budget, and he sat on he was the chair of the budget committee, and he made a commitment that morning to say that, even though he's going to be a councilman of the city of Los Angeles, he would be more than happy to share his expertise, continue that in that vein for the state as well, and deal with the issues for the future. We then kind of made a switch. We had a lady by the name of Kathleen Cole, and she is an executive legislative representative. But she spoke to us, and she's from the Metropolitan Water District, and she talked to us about the Bay Delta Conservation Plan. And what she's talking about there is the Delta, the Sacramento Delta, and the issues with the water and getting water down to Southern California and Northern California. That area provides drinking water for 25 million Californians. Northern and Southern California is irrigation of half of the nation's fruits and vegetables. That water irrigates that much food. She talked about some of the issues that face that conservation plan. the ecology systems, problems with fisheries, seismic risks, sea level rising and the water rising and having to do with the dikes and levees, those types of things. Talked about the cost of it, who would be the beneficiaries, who are the users, and how they'll pay the cost. I found it to be a very comprehensive presentation. She took her time, and she had a handout as well. If anyone would like to see it, I brought it along tonight. From there, we spoke with a man called John Nunn, who works for the Department of Housing and Community Development. And he's a manager of the program for California Enterprise Zones. And if you don't know what enterprise zones are, they were established in 1984 to stimulate business investment in the state of California and create job opportunities for Californians. Santa Clarita has the benefit of 2 enterprise zones, as I understand it. And he spoke about some of the issues. Evidently, the governor wants to try to curtail some of the money that is that people get to take advantage of as far as their tax credits are concerned. So some of those are sales and use and employee hiring. And just one to go along with that, since December 13th of 2012 in Santa Clarita with the 2, and if I have this right, with the 2 enterprise zones, there's been 6,710 jobs hired and 420 businesses utilizing the zone. So it's been something effective for our area. Okay, and then I talked to you, I mentioned about a Republican caucus consultant. We spoke with a man by the name of John Kennedy, and he spoke about CEQA, which is the California Environment Quality Act. And as I recall, what he spoke about mostly was the issue of trying to change CEQA so that that act cannot be abused by people trying to, or not trying to, but affecting lawsuits to cause problems for different projects. And in effect, using the CEQA for things it wasn't intended to do. Okay. We also had a presentation from Senator Fran Pavey for the 25th Senatorial District, if I'm not mistaken. We also had a presentation by Steve Knight, who is also a senator. And that was pretty much it. But the thing that was really, really what I think the best of it is that we got to meet face to face. We got to speak with these people or with their aides and assistants. They made themselves available to us face to face. And if it was a situation where someone had a question that was a little more involved, each one of them to the person said, I will meet with you, my staff will meet with you, presented them with a card, made sure that the people in the audience, not just the people that asked the questions, knew that they were available to them. So I found that refreshing. I found that every one of those people were committed to what they said they wanted to do and were going to do. I also wanted to take a minute when I closed, and I talked about people being Democrats and being Republicans. Scott Wilk, our Assemblyman, went out of his way to make sure that he had people from both sides of the aisle to come and speak with us and to meet with us. And I thought that that was something that commendatory. In the past, this was my 4th trip. I've been on 3 others where people would come from other sides of the aisle and they would stand there with the politician that invited them, and nice things would be said, and as they walked out the door, the politician would make some smart remark about them, which was always humorous, but I always thought, you know, if you're really trying to work together, why would you make a comment like that? And Scott didn't do that. Assemblyman Wilk didn't do that. He was very, very sincere, I thought. And as well as him being very sincere, so was his staff. I had requested through Carl Goldman to have a special meeting offline, and Goldman's people got a hold of Wilk's staff, and they went above and beyond to make that meeting happen. And I'll tell you, that meant a lot to me. So they did an outstanding job. And last but not least, Carl Goldman, what he does for the community, in giving us an opportunity to take this bus ride to go meet with our leaders in Sacramento, cannot be outdone by anyone. When you're there, the politicians that you meet with will tell you, no one else in the state does this. So this is a unique opportunity for us, and I really appreciate what Carl does, as well as Scott Wilk. So both of them, Wilk and Goldman, I think they're sincere and they're committed to what they're doing for the community. Anybody have any questions? That'll pretty much end what I have to report. If you get the opportunity, go.
Well, Spence?
Yes.
Are you going to tell them about our special meeting?
Well, as everybody knows, we've had some issues with chloride here, and it's going to be a burning issue. That's all there is to it. And people are working very hard to make it as palatable as possible. But I wanted some answers to some questions. And so it had been offered on past trips and in these trips that if there's anybody who wants to meet offline with a leader there, we'll see if we can affect that, make it happen. So I asked for it, and we were successful, and we were able to do that. And as a person in the community that's concerned about what happens in our community, I cannot tell you how much that meant to me that Goldman and Wilk went out of their way to make sure that we could have that meeting. And it was very, very successful as far as I'm concerned. Okay, somebody else? Yes.
This is an annual trip in March every year or April?
Yes, he has it in March every year, in the springtime every year. And also along those lines, I think it's in May. I think it's coming right up. He also has started, and this will be the second annual trip, and I think it's a 3-day trip where they fly to Washington, D.C., and are guests of the congressman and community leaders and people in the community get to fly back, spend a night. Is it one night or two? I don't remember. But last year when they went, Senator McCain was the keynote speaker at the dinner that they had that night in Washington, D.C. So I think that's probably worthwhile as well. Okay. Yes, Richard.
Can you hear me? What's the cost?
If I remember right, it's around about $465. That included the bus ride, the hotel, and the dinner. And I think he served us lunch on the bus, but breakfast was on our own, and lunch coming back the next day, or dinner the next day, was on our own too.
In D.C.,
that's considerably more, but I don't know the exact price of it. I'd have to check. Okay. All right. All right, thank you.